Welcome back to Mythic Sky Storytime. I'm Dr. Laura Tad, spiritually oriented psychological astrologer. This is my 11th show in my series, Cosmic Costumes. It's been a series of shows where I'm going through each of the signs sequentially, so this is the second to last episode in this series. In this episode, I'll be discussing the astrological sign of Aquarius, sometimes referred to as Aquarian the Contrarian. So Aquarius is the 11th sign in the zodiac, and it is represented by the water bearer. And sometimes that ends up being confusing because it's actually an air sign, but it is the bearer of water. But it's really understood that what that water bearer is carrying is knowledge, which is its through line to it being an air sign. And the glyph that we use, the symbol we use, looks like waves, which just can add to the confusion in people thinking that it's a water sign. But one way to think of it is, rather than it being the water of the waves, it's the wind that is moving the water that is causing the waves. So you're not on the shore, it's out in sea, and it's the wind and the movement, and that brings it more into the realm of air. Now, astrologically, every sign is associated with a planet. Now, historically, prior to the discovery of Uranus, which is the ruling planet of Aquarius, we saw there to be a relationship with Saturn and Aquarius, which is interesting because Saturn and Uranus are very different energies, and yet there are overlaps and through lines between the two. But Uranus is really more accurate as a archetypal through line to help us understand this 11th sign. As I have been doing with the latter half of the zodiac, I'm also going to talk a little bit about the polarity point, the opposite sign of Aquarius, to help you understand the sign of Aquarius. So Leo is the sign that occurs 6 months apart, before or after Aquarius. So looking to Leo can help us to some extent understand Aquarius more completely. And the qualities that we associate with Aquarius are that, as I was saying earlier, it's an air sign. It's also a fixed sign. So it's the fixed air sign of the zodiac. And all fixed signs, as I've talked about before, occur in the middle of seasons. It's the most intense, regardless of the season that we're in. All fixed signs are the most intense time of the season and the most intense signs. So Aquarius occurs in the middle of winter. Calendar-wise, Aquarius occurs in mid to late January to mid-February. So it's the dead of winter in a lot of ways. And so it's that most intense time of winter is when Aquarius falls. Now, the fixed signs in general, regardless of element in that intensity, there's an enduring quality that they have. There's a perseverance quality to them because they're that part of that enduring, going to push through that inertia, going to keep going. But conversely, that can also sometimes manifest in a freezing quality, sort of just as intensely as they can push, they can freeze. We see that particularly in Taurus, which is the earth fixed sign, the bull who's not going to be moved. But when we get into the realm of Aquarius, it can be almost like intellectual paralyzation that could show up. Fixed signs also have a unyielding quality, part of that intensity. They can have a closed-minded tunnel vision thing that's different than how we see it in Aries in particular. It's more sort of the intensity of, this is how it is for me, and until I decide it's otherwise, my mind, you can't change the minds. It's very hard to change the minds of somebody who has a lot in a fixed sign, because they need to sort of get there on their own, and they can change their mind, but it's hard to influence because they can have such a intense focus. So there is a focused quality in general to the fixed signs. They have a magnetic quality to them of in that intensity that can be really attractive to people. So then as we blend this fixed energy, this intense energy, this stamina, focused, attractive, magnetic energy, then we blend that with the air quality that we have then with Aquarius, right? There's only one fixed air sign. There's one earth fixed sign. There's one water fixed sign. There's one fire fixed sign. Each element and each mode only come together one time. So with Aquarius, we move into fixed air. And so then we blend this intensity with the abstract that is air, which is why Aquarius can have the bad rap of sort of being aloof. We blend the air of idealism with the fixed energy, and that's that, what I was saying before, sort of this is what I think and you can't change my mind energy. It can have its benefits in terms of people really, with a lot of Aquarius, can stand by their convictions. But sometimes it's good to have some malleability, but it's not a mutable sign. So you'd have to look elsewhere in the chart to find that malleability. You also, with the air signs, there can be a flightiness or a non-committalness to the air, because the air, right, as an element, it's always in motion. And so you have that with all the air signs, and then you blend that constant moving, constant motion, non-committal energy with Aquarius, and it can come off as aloof or cold because it's not engaging in the same way. It can seem very distracted. We have this blending of energies. It is a fixed sign, it is an air sign, and in modern astrology, we associate it with Uranus. And Uranus was discovered in 1781 by William Herschel. And Uranus is one of the slower moving planets of the zodiac. It's not as slow as Pluto. It is one of the planets that will, for a lot of people, move all the way through the zodiac in a lifetime, but it does take 84, 85 years for that to happen. So it's an 84-year cycle around the zodiac for Uranus. So Uranus, in its relationship to Aquarius, has this unconventional way of operating in the cosmos. So it spins sideways. It is this doing it in its sort of own way. Even the rings of Uranus go north to south as opposed to east to west in that spinning sideways, right? So the whole thing is sort of doing its own thing and moving in an atypical way around the sun is part of why we can see this through line to Aquarius as an archetype. So in general, Uranus spends about 7 years a sign, and that contributes to, then you times that by 12 and you get to this 84, 85 year cycle. And then it's in opposition for everyone around 42, 43. That's half of that time, right? So it is exactly opposite where it was when we were born in our early 40s. And this is often a time that is thought of sort of as a midlife crisis transit. And we can again see this relationship to Aquarius, because it's part of what Aquarius is about, is authenticity. And so that piece that can get triggered for us in our early 40s of whether or not we are leading authentic lives is represented by that Uranian-Uranus opposition. And archetypally, Uranus is then, in myth, he was Uranus in Greek mythology. Now, one of the things that as astrologers we have come to see, because the first set of planets up through Saturn that we can see with the naked eye were really named as a result of observation correlation. Astrologers in antiquity were making observations of what was occurring on Earth when a given planet was somewhere in the zodiac, and seeing that through line to understand it or even name the star in relation to how they were seeing it playing out on Earth. After antiquity, the latter planets, so Uranus, Neptune, Pluto, were not named as a result of observation correlation. They were named by scientists and astronomers who were simply continuing with the theme of the Roman pantheon and not necessarily this correlation from an astrological perspective. So with Uranus, what astrologers have seen over the last 250 years-ish, given when it was discovered in the late 1700s, is that it really, more than paralleling the myth of Uranus, who is the sky god and the beginning of everything and the god of chaos, which there is a bit of that you could attribute to Uranus in terms of the unconventional and the unexpected energy that we can see with Uranus, with Aquarius. It really, Uranus in its relationship to astrology and how we can see this through line to Aquarius is more in line with the story of Prometheus, which we will get into later in the show. But quickly, right, Prometheus steals fire from the gods and gives it to humans, right? This rebel with a cause energy that we see with Uranus and is very much part of the Aquarian archetype. So briefly touching upon Saturn to see how that too can relate, because where Uranus is expect the unexpected and the unconventional, it literally spins sideways. Saturn's associated with stability and structures and standards. And in some ways that seems very much the antithesis of Aquarius. But we'll see as we move through the episode how there is some of this through line of the stability of Saturn. And this idea of Saturn, time didn't exist before Saturn. Saturn being father time, being the elder, being the wise person. And that's really the through line that we'll see, right? The water bearer being the bearer of knowledge. Saturn in its authority, in its elderhood, being the bearer of knowledge because of lived experience. So that's some of that through line to Aquarius. As we blend all of this together, the fixed energy, the air energy, the planetary archetypal energy, mixing that all together and coming up with a cohesive energy of Aquarius, we get the key phrase for Aquarius is I know, right? That water bearer, the bearer of knowledge. So I know. Now in general, Aquarius can come off as aloof. That's that flighty air energy. But there is also this component to Aquarius that is deeply committed to authenticity. People with a lot of Aquarius or Aquarius suns find it incredibly uncomfortable if they are in a situation where they are having to be performative, which is that polarity to Leo that loves to perform and be on stage. For Aquarius, it's all about authenticity. Aquarius thinks about things differently, thinking outside the box. And so there's that clever quality to Aquarius that we see. Aquarius is very much about the group and community. So in its engagement with others, people with a lot of Aquarian energy can often sort of do better in a group dynamic than in a dyadic one-on-one exchange. Part of the aloofness that we see with Aquarius can sometimes manifest as being detached, as being sort of not fully emotionally engaged because it's an air sign. So it can appear as sort of disinterested, but it's more happy being the fly on the wall in some respects. In being an air sign, like we saw with Libra, there is a quality to Aquarius that is very attached to the idea of equanimity and fairness. And it manifests differently than we see in Libra, that is an air sign, but it's a cardinal air sign. So with Libra, there is this wanting everything to be fair and just that is more initiatory. With Aquarius, because we're now in a fixed sign, it can in some ways be more emphatic about it. And its connection to the group and humanity, because it's very much the humanitarian sign, then it's what's fair for the group, as opposed to with Libra, you might see more what's fair to the individual. And Aquarius is going to be more attached to what's fair for a large number of people. In its cleverness and its air quality, that intellectual quality, it's very future thinking. It can be challenged to be in the moment, in the here and now, because it's always sort of imagining what could be in the future and thinking 5 steps down the road. And so sometimes being present can be hard for Aquarius that can be part of what then contributes to the appearance of being aloof or detached is their thinking and processing information about stuff that has actually yet to occur. Aquarius can have a idealistic quality to it because this vision of what's possible, they can get fixed in that fixed energy attached to the ideal possibility. And we see this sort of in contrast to the most recent fixed sign of Scorpio that can be really pessimistic. With Aquarius, it can be very idealistic in that, oh, well, everything's going to be okay. It's going to work out. There can be some of that experience that we see with Aquarius that almost manically attached. That's where that becomes this fixed energy of that idealism. That of course it's going to work out. Why would it be any other way? Aquarius, and I've alluded to this some, right? So in that aloofness, that detachedness, that can come off sometimes as impersonal. It doesn't mean that they don't like people. It doesn't mean that they can't have a powerful connection with individuals, but they are more group oriented and not as concerned necessarily about letting you know who they are. Part of that detachment is detached from being too exposed to that air mental energy. They're not necessarily going to let you know who they are or wherever let that be exposed or have that be readily visible. And so that can come off as impersonal. But their intellect, again, that idea of sort of this highly free thinker energy and this love of future thinking and thinking outside the box then results in a lot of this innovative inventor energy. Aquarius is definitely the most revolutionary thinking, not just revolutionary politically, but the more innovative, the better, the more cutting edge, the better. We tend to associate Aquarius with technology. And that's just because in our current world, in the 21st century, the stuff that's the most cutting edge and most innovative does tend to be tech oriented. But regardless of whether or not it's technology, it's that innovative inventor, thinking outside the box energy. We also very much associate Aquarius with the liberator in liberation. This freedom, breaking outside of the box energy is very much part of Aquarius, and we'll see that when I talk to you about later in the episode when I go into the myth of Prometheus, this idea of liberation, this idea of freedom from everything, really. It's not even that there's a specific thing that Aquarius is rebelling from. It's the rebel with a cause. But there is this absolute necessity for Aquarius to not be boxed in, to not be reined in, that it is needing to have the freedom to explore. That's how Aquarius is able to be innovative, is by not putting limitations on it, which is that interesting contrast with it being associated with Saturn that likes limitations. Aquarius likes to break the mold, and so it's inventing the new ways of doing things that Saturn has set the groundwork for, perhaps, and then you build upon that and you reinvent from the existing structure, from the existing model. Within all of that, that mixture of that innovator energy, Aquarius likes to be original, likes to be unique. It loves that sort of energy. As we talked about, the planet itself, Uranus, is unique. It spins sideways. So that unique, unusual energy is very much part of Aquarius. It's the more outspoken sign of the zodiac in many ways too, because it wants to challenge the status quo. Sometimes just to see what happens when you do, but usually there's some reason for it. Either Aquarius is wanting to understand why things are the way they are, or is absolutely unwilling to accept the way things are, and so must be outspoken to try and create change or create a catalyst for change. Aquarius can be very paradoxical in its energy. in its rebel with a cause, in its desire to break out of the mold. Sometimes it's not necessarily that there's something wrong with the existing way of doing things, but Aquarius wants to be paradoxical to see, okay, well, this seems to be working, but what happens if we do it differently? Will it be better? And so it's not necessarily just being paradoxical to rebel. It can be out of curiosity, because that air energy is wanting to play with things intellectually a little bit and be inventive and saying, okay, well, what happens if we go left instead of right? Some of that sort of sliding door concept. And what happens if we do it differently? And there can simply be an energy of curiosity that paradoxical energy comes from. In general, people with a lot of Aquarius in their chart, or significant things in Aquarius, tend to have a pretty quick wit and a pretty good sense of humor, because they're looking at the world sideways in some ways, right? The planet spins, Uranus spins back sideways. So there's this energy of having that quick wit because they're looking at the world differently, and that sort of turning things on its head is contributing to that quick wit. And as I've alluded to a little bit, Aquarius is very much associated with rebellion and revolutionary energy. It is for sure the most rebellious sign of the zodiac and the rebel with a cause. And it isn't just rebelling for the sake of rebelling. There is some reason behind it, even if, as I was saying, it's just to sort of out of curiosity. But it is rarely from a place of anger or malice or vindictiveness. It's typically with a just cause or wanting to see how things could improve. So even if it is this energy of just wanting to see what could be different, could be improved. So it can also be connected to this sort of clever energy, this idealism energy that is very much part of this Aquarian, and this I know, right? There could be an egoic quality. I know the best way to do this, just listen to me. Could be part of that revolutionary rebel energy. As I said a little bit before, we tend to associate Aquarius with technology and scientific discovery. That's part of that, what's cutting edge, wanting to understand, wanting to make sense of the world, make sense of things in a new way. And because Aquarius is an air sign, and so it's very heady and not necessarily paying attention to the emotional social cues around them, because it's this intellectual way of engaging in the world, sometimes Aquarius can be tactless or shocking because it's simply saying what it thinks, whether or not that's something somebody is in a position where they're wanting to hear it. So we can sometimes see this as this shocking, tactless response, or this just failure to read social cues can be sometimes a vulnerability with Aquarius, because they have had aha moment. They've had this eureka idea and something makes sense to them and they simply want to share it. But because they can struggle to read social cues, it can come off as tactless or ill-timed. We tend to associate Aquarius, because it's so group-oriented, with a tribe or a community. And so this idea of the collective of humanity is very much associated with Aquarius. And looking at it from a physiological perspective, which I've talked about in a lot of episodes, and how different signs are associated with different parts of the body, we have given Aquarius to the calves and ankles and our circulatory system. So particularly, I think with the circulatory system, we can see how that is linked with Aquarius, of that energy, how air moves in the world, and then how our circulatory system moves things throughout our body, moves blood throughout our body. So you can see that parallel with Aquarius. And then part of that ankles and calves is that in traditional medical astrology, you're simply sort of moving down the body as we go through the zodiac. And So we've now gotten to the lower part of the body. In the next episode, when we get to Pisces, the Pisces governs the feet. But so for Aquarius, we have the ankles and the calves, so the lower parts of the legs. And so people with a lot of Aquarius or things in Aquarius, depending where Aquarius falls, you may see these vulnerabilities with, or issues potentially, with your calves and ankles or circulatory system, or it may just be something that's present in your life in a significant way. So shifting gears now into the psychosocial development aspect of the episode, we are now looking at our mid-60s and mid-70s. And as I've said in previous episodes, it's really more looking at how this sign is reflective of this phase of life, rather than you don't get to engage with this energy until you're that age. So moving into Aquarius, moving into this phase of elderhood is really where we are now. We see how part of understanding Aquarius is related to having a better understanding of the water bearer image that we associate with the sign. Because although Aquarius is the water bearer, it's an air sign, as I've talked about. And the jug of water that Aquarius is pouring, because you don't see Aquarius carrying a jug around. Aquarius is pouring this jug of water. So the jug of water that we see Aquarius pouring in all of the imagery, all the iconography, should be understood as a vessel of knowledge. So this jug of water is a jug of knowledge that Aquarius is pouring onto the earth, is pouring into humanity, and is sharing knowledge with the world. So in that context, it's this phase of life where one is pouring the knowledge that they have acquired throughout their lives to younger generations. So this is where we really see this elder phase being one where you have an opportunity then to share your lived experience with the younger generations. Things are no longer just book knowledge. It's no longer theoretical understanding. There is lived experience, hard knocks, boots on the ground. You've lived through it when you speak to younger generations about their relationships, their marriages and partnerships, their career, their children. You are speaking from a place of you've learned it and you've lived it, and you can speak with a different level of authority. You can pour out the knowledge you have acquired throughout your lifetime with those who are up and coming. And it also, at this point, this mid-60s and older, mid-60s, mid-70s, you are past your second Saturn return that occurs at 60. That is now done. You're really shifting into the beginnings of, and then moving more fully into throughout that decade of mid-60s to mid-70s, throughout those 10 years, more and more into the phase of the elder. More and more, and we can see that then that is this through line back to Saturn's relationship with Aquarius, more and more into that elder, the one who has information to share and has had the lived experience to then be able to be a guide for those who are coming up. Now, another thing that we see during this phase and stage of life is how Aquarius is a sign that loves independence, that loves freedom. And so we see during these earlier years of elderhood that this is a phase, a time of psychosocial development that can bring up actually a lot of issues around autonomy and independence. Are you going to continue to live independently? Are you going to have help? And so it can trigger the desire to continue to live independently, or do you do cohabitation? Are you living with others, which is also very Aquarian in that concept of groups. So we can see during this phase that there is this transitional energy. So how much are you going to live independently? How much are you dependent on community and family and other groups as you're moving into this phase of the elderhood. So potentially living, in assisted living. That can be this Aquarian energy, not necessarily, because it can also be that Aquarian energy that's insistent on dependence and that fixed energy that will not live with others and insists on independence. So you can see both of those things, and there's a grappling of that in a way that we don't really see prior to this age and stage of life. And that can continue past the mid-70s, but this is really when it starts to become a conversation that you have with family and your larger community. All right, so switching gears again, we're getting into the story of Prometheus and Epimetheus. And linguistically, the epistemology, Prometheus means foresight and Epimetheus, hindsight, and they are brothers. So the story of Prometheus and Epimetheus, and typically most people know, or often people are more familiar with portions of Prometheus' story than they ever were about Epimetheus, unless you've studied mythology. But so the story of Prometheus and Epimetheus, they were Titan brothers. And as the story goes, during the War of the Titans, so at this point, Zeus has come back from being sequestered and raised and hid away from his father, Saturn, or Kronos. He's come back, he's released all of his siblings, and his siblings are fighting the Titans, the older generation, for control of the universe. And in the War of the Titans, so the gods fighting the Titans, Prometheus and Epimetheus, who were Titans, they decided to side with the gods' generation, with Zeus, with Hera, with Neptune or Poseidon, with Hades, with all of that generation, the generation of gods, as opposed to Kronos and who was Saturn and the other Titans. So Prometheus and Epimetheus fight alongside their, I suppose, nieces and nephews, or it's a little confusing in mythology, but they decide to fight alongside the younger generation. And ultimately, right, the gods win the war. And so as a gift and exchange of gratitude for their support in helping winning the war against the older generation, Zeus, or Jupiter in Roman pantheon, bequeaths upon Prometheus and Epimetheus the gift of populating the earth. And Epimetheus decides to create all of the animals, all of the creatures that are non-human on earth. So all the lions and the dolphins and all of these creatures that were on the earth at that time. And Prometheus creates humans. And when Epimetheus was making his animals, making his creations, he gifted them. Some of them got sharp teeth, some of them had sharp claws, because he knew in creating all these creatures, they would need something to defend themselves from each other. And yet there was only so much of that to go around. And Prometheus really took his time in creating humans, in forming his creations. And so by the time he was done forming humanity, the additional gifts of sharp teeth or claws or different ways of self-defense that Epimetheus had been able to bequeath upon his creations, there was no more. There was nothing for Prometheus to give his creations something to defend themselves from each other, or more importantly, from his brother's creations. So he decided that what they needed, the way they could defend themselves from the dangers of the world, was if they had fire. that would allow them to have self-defense and also be able to flourish and grow and evolve as a being on the planet. And so he asked Zeus if his creations, if he could bequeath upon his creations fire. And without much thought to it whatsoever, Zeus said, no, absolutely not. You cannot give them fire, because Zeus, just as his father had feared being taken over, Zeus feared that he too would be usurped. And so he didn't want humanity to have fire. He didn't want humanity to have too much knowledge, because he feared what would happen to him if they were too empowered. If humans had too many resources, how would that threaten his stance in the cosmos? And so he said no. But Prometheus was insistent. And he cared deeply about his creations. He wanted his children, for lack of a better word, to be safe, to be able to grow, to be able to flourish. And so he stole fire from Olympus and brought it down to humanity and gave it to humanity, even though he had been explicitly told that he was not allowed to do so. And while it had been gifted to them, and against Zeus's explicit command, Zeus could not take it back once it had been bequeathed. It could not be undone. And so as a result, he decided, despite all of the help that Prometheus had given him during the war with his elders, he tied Prometheus to a rock on a mountain and had his liver eaten out only to grow back every day. He was in constant cyclical torture for disobeying Zeus's command. Now, one of the things that's interesting that the Greeks chose to use the liver specifically as an example of how Prometheus was tortured for disobeying and rebelling against the gods was that in ancient Greece, the liver was believed to be the seat of emotion, power, and intelligence. It wasn't simply that Prometheus was being tortured by having an organ eaten out. It was specifically the liver, and this idea of his emotions and passion and intelligence were being extracted from him over and over and over again. And so this energy, his care for humanity, that emotional tie to the group, his passion for that, his forward thinking and innovative ways of creating humans and desire for them too to have intelligence and passion and emotions, that was something Zeus kept trying to, by way of punishing Prometheus, arrest with humanity. And interestingly, in Chinese medicine, the liver is also associated with emotional well-being and the regulation of emotions. And it's an interesting through line because we tend to think of Aquarius as so aloof and non-emotional. And so that constant removal of the liver, then this lack of emotional engagement that we could see with that organ being in constant depletion, then that lack of emotional engagement that we can see with Aquarius. So there's a lot of overlap with Prometheus and how we look at Aquarius because of that rebel with a cause, that innovative, forward-thinking, inventive. He invented humanity. It didn't exist before him. So there is a lot of that overlap that we see with Prometheus and the sign of Aquarius. And that desire to do what is right regardless of the consequences. So, shifting gears once again, we're going to now move in to the meditative section of the episode. So you want to make sure that you're somewhere where you can sit comfortably. The meditation will probably be about 20-25 minutes, as the other ones have been. So however you're choosing to sit, I recommend that you are sitting somewhere where you can sit comfortably for that amount of time. You don't want to have whatever's going on in your body pull you out of the experience. So whether that's sitting in a chair or sitting on a meditation cushion, I do recommend sitting as opposed to lying down. It tends to be better experience with the meditation. It keeps you more in the experience if you are sitting as opposed to lying down. Lying down, it can be easy to sort of nod off. It also can impact the flow of energy because the degree to which our spine is straight can change how a meditation is experienced. So as we have in previous episodes, we'll start with some belly breathing. I'll do the counting for you so you don't need to. As I've talked about in previous episodes, with belly breathing, you want to inhale through the nose and exhale through the mouth. We'll be doing it slowly, so I'll be doing the counting. We'll do 4 rounds of belly breathing, then engage the chakra system, and then move into the visualization guided meditation piece. And feel free to pause till you are situated. So with your eyes closed, you want to slowly inhale through your nose, really filling your whole body with oxygen. 1, 2, 3, 4. And pause. And exhale completely. 1, 2, 3, 4. And pause. Inhale again. 1, 2, 3, 4. Pause. Exhale completely. 1, 2, 3, 4. Pause. Inhale. 1, 2, 3, 4, and pause. Exhale. 1, 2, 3, 4. Pause. Last time. Inhale again. 1, 2, 3, 4. Pause. Exhale completely. 1, 2, 3, 4. Pause. Now, returning to a normal, natural rhythm of breathing. You still want to breathe deeply, you still keep your eyes closed, but you can breathe at a time and a count that feels natural and comfortable to you. And so bringing your attention now to base chakra, to root chakra. Breathing as you connect with this point. This is the chakra center, the energy center at the base of the spine. Helps us ground, helps us stay centered. Connects us to the earth, to the chi, the life force of Pachamama, Mother Earth. Keeps us present. And on your next inhale, you're going to bring your attention to sacral chakra, second chakra, just a little below your belly button. And this is a center of intense strength. It is tied to the reproductive organs, so it is the center of creation in many ways. And our ability to be receptive and directive when we act and when we yield. or there's an inner strength that you can connect with here in this sacral chakra. And on your next inhale, bring your attention to the solar plexus, third chakra. This is the center, just sort of in between the rib cage and the belly button. Solar plexus is sun center, right? So it is a center of emotional connection and power, right? That center of our body where we get emotional reactions, that gut feeling, that is the solar plexus. How we feel, how we respond emotionally to the world around us. And how we are able to shine, right? It's the sun. How do we present our power, our authentic self? And on your next inhale, bring your attention to heart chakra. Right, just in the middle of the chest, the rib cage, right where the heart is. And the heart chakra is also the center of the chakra system. In between the lower and upper three chakras, the heart center, chakra center. The heart chakra is connected to our capacity to love and accept love from others. Our capacity for compassion and empathy. To express compassion and empathy can also be where we get wounded, heart wounds where we have not been loved or treated kindly, can live in the heart chakra. And on your next inhale, bring your attention to throat chakra. Just in the middle of the throat, this center connects to our ability and the ease with which we communicate, how we speak, what we say, our ability to listen too. How do we respond to what is being said to us around us? The throat chakra is tied to that part of us that is communicative or struggles to communicate. How do we speak our truths? Do we speak our truths? That all resides here in the throat chakra center. And on your next inhale, bringing your attention to third eye chakra, the forehead between the eyebrows. This chakra is the center of vision, of unbiased perception, being able to see truths, center of vision, visionary wisdom, big picture, expansive view of life. And on your next inhale, bring your attention to crown chakra. The center, just at the crown of the head, just at the top of the head. And it's from this center that you can connect with the divine, God, Goddess, Spirit, Universe, whatever your language is for that point, that source, the divine place from which we all come and return. This center, this crown chakra helps you to have a through line, a direct line of communication with Source. It tethers us to that pure energy and light. And on your next inhale, you want to bring that light, that energy of Source back down through the central channel, through the chakras. And as you do, it's both helping to heal jagged edges and dark corners of a chakra, as well as simultaneously enveloping you in a bubble of white light. So on your next inhale, bringing that energy, that light of divinity, of Source, in and out and down through the third eye. Allow it to clear away foggy corners, maybe areas that you don't like to look as it's challenging. Have it help you to clear away and heal some of that challenge. And on your next inhale, bring your attention down now into throat chakra. Allow this white golden light to heal the throat chakra. Times where you've struggled to speak up, let it be a salve healing your throat chakra, almost like a cough syrup would heal a raw throat. And on your next inhale, bring your attention and that light down now into heart chakra. Let that white golden light heal your heart aches, heartbreaks, where you've been defensive, where you have been wounded. Allow this light from the divine to soothe those hurts and heartaches and heartbreaks. And on your next inhale, bring your attention and the light of the divine down into solar plexus. And as it does, it can help to heal and soothe emotional overwhelm, so that you are able to be emotionally engaged and not emotionally reactive. And on your next inhale, bringing that light down into sacral chakra. Allow it to help heal issues around power. Help to bring into balance your receptive and directive sides, for both are required as we walk through life. That give and take, that yielding and moving, depending on the situation. One is called for, and then another. They effortlessly flow back and forth, accessed when they are needed. And on your next inhale, bring your attention now all the way down through the channel, through the chakras into base chakra, root chakra. Allowing it to help heal issues around grounding. Where are you ungrounded? Where are you too stubborn and unyielding? This golden white light helping to bring those two pieces of grounding and stuckness into better harmony. And now with these centers all functioning more optimally and surrounded by a bubble of white light, your base chakra, crown chakra, encircling your whole body in protective light. From the divine, from God, Goddess, Source, all the way to Pachamama, Mother Earth, you are protected as we move into the guided imagery. And so bringing your attention Now back up to third eye, to your mind's eye. See yourself walking along a mountain path. And as you walk, there is a warm breeze dancing all around you. Taking in your surroundings, you notice a dragonfly darting to and fro just a few feet in front of you. And as you walk, dragonfly beckons you forward along this path to an unknown destination. And every time it seems dragonfly gets just a little bit out of view, he circles back to you, calling you forward. As you make your way up the mountain, you find it easy to breathe despite the incline. And taking in the rich and fragrant air all around you, you find this journey to be full of ease and curiosity. Having made your way to the top of the mountain, the wind is warm as it dances along your skin. Dragonfly now is climbing higher and higher in the sky. He's almost out of view when suddenly there is a gust of wind. And within that wind, you watch Dragonfly transform into an old wise woman who, like Glinda in her bubble, floats down in the wind to stand beside you. She has met you here today to help you connect with your authentic self, to discover and reconnect with that which makes you uniquely you. As you stand facing this wise woman who embodies all the majesty and magic of Dragonfly, keeper of a truth and illusion, you know she has the capacity to illuminate truth and true parts of ourselves that our mundane everyday life can obscure from view. She has a wisdom that is ancient as she stands before you. This elder, with her iridescent cloak and captivating eyes, seems to be Dragonfly personified. And she stands here, ready to answer your questions and acknowledge your unique gifts you bring to the world and how you have something to offer in this life, something that no one else on the planet has to offer humanity. Standing with her, see what suggestions she has for you to connect with your unique self, your authentic self. How do you connect with this person? Recognize them. Do you have unique gifts that you are not taking advantage of? Or maybe you're unaware of? What gifts do you have to offer the world that she recommends you connect with and engage with more regularly? In addition to your gifts, is there something you're unaware of as a gift? Something you have to offer humanity that is uniquely yours, that you have struggled to identify? See if she has some suggestions for you of how to unpack that, or remember what your unique gifts are. Maybe you knew and have forgotten. See what ideas and information she has to share. And as you become more aware of some of your uniqueness and of the gifts you have to offer, how does she recommend that you stay connected with this part of yourself? Honor your uniqueness. If you have found yourself fearful of stepping into this side of yourself in the past to more fully shine, fearlessly present your unique self to the world, what does she recommend could help you to feel more confident, more secure in letting your uniqueness shine and be seen by the world, more comfortable being your authentic self, regardless of how it's received? How does she recommend you maintain this connection to your uniqueness, regardless of how it's received in community? If you are someone who spent lots of time in community and vulnerable to blending with those around you, how does she recommend you maintain this unique sense of self in the midst of community, in the midst of desiring to belong? For it doesn't have to be one or the other. What does she recommend you do or bring into your life so you have community and autonomy? As you stand there, let any other questions that arise come up naturally. And if some of her answers have been confusing, ask for clarity. She is here to support you. And as your conversation comes to its natural end, ask her how you can reconnect when you find yourself struggling to let your uniqueness shine. How can you reconnect with this elder? And thanking her for her insight. Ask her if there's anything she would like you to do to honor her for her insight today. What reciprocity does she feel would be appropriate? And parting in whatever way feels appropriate. There is a sudden gust of wind, and within that wind, this wise elder, this wise woman is lifted into the sky, transforming once again into dragonfly. And darting around in the wind, dragonfly guides you once again as you make your way back down the path, back down the mountain you have come. And empowered by your own authenticity, you slowly find your way back down the mountain and down the path. Dragonfly, now having sped along and out of sight, but you walk with confidence without his assistance. And walking down the path, you slowly find your way back into the room and back into your body. Slowly beginning to move fingers and toes as you open your eyes whenever you are ready. And when you're ready, I recommend grabbing a journal or perhaps your phone to make some notes about what came through to you today with this meditation. Thank you so much for joining me on this 11th show of Cosmic Costumes. Once again, I'm Dr. Laura Tad. Please like and subscribe to Mythic Sky Storytime wherever you get your podcasts. To learn more about me or my work, please visit my website at mythicsky.com.